Hello again. This is going to be a short video where we're just going to look at how to add physics to our model, starting with the breasts. So there are a lot of methods for adding physics actually to the breasts. I've tried quite a few of them over the years. I've come to the conclusion that the surface deform is the best of these methods. That being said, I think they all have their place. So I would like to show you the main methods for adding physics, and you can maybe choose the one you like. Before we get started, I would just like to point out what we actually want out of these physics solutions. And the first one of these, in my opinion, is collisions. So we want to have a physics object that can actually interact with other physics objects. Not all of the solutions give you this functionality. The second one is performance. So we preferably don't want a solution that is going to limit our ability to animate because it'll increase our render times or something like that. And the third criterion is quality of result. So obviously we want a good result. It doesn't matter if it's realistic. What matters is if it looks good. So keep that in mind. All right, so the first method I want to show you is the bone physics method. So in this case, we are directly baking physics into the bones. So there are several add-ons of Blender that actually do this. The one I have here is called Wiggle Bones, but they all function generally in the same way. I've created this test animation to help us see what effect our methods have on the breasts. So the biggest strength of Wiggle Bones is definitely how easy it is to add it to your mesh. You just literally press a button. The quality of results varies, but I would say generally is pretty good. And it can also handle chains of bones, so that gives you a lot of flexibility when it comes to this method. So let's see how it looks. By default, I would say it's too strong, but that's not really fair to the add-on. Let's actually adjust the settings and see if we can make it look good. All right, so this is what I came up with. It was very quick to get this result. I would say I am relatively happy with this. Like, it looks decent, but it doesn't look good, in my opinion. It looks a little bit too stiff still, and obviously the breast only has one point of articulation. It would look better if it was a chain of bones, but that's something you can do if you really want to stick with this method. The major downside of this method is that it doesn't support collisions. Now, there are some add-ons that do purport to support collisions. I don't really know how well they work. I don't think they actually work that well. This method, generally speaking, is mutually exclusive with collisions. Don't quote me on that, but that's my understanding. So anyway, I think this is the most beginner-friendly method, and you should definitely keep this in mind. The add-on I've used here is Wigglebones, and it's completely free. The next method I want to show you is something I like to call the center of mass method. So this is the basic idea is that in this case, we're only going to simulate the center of mass for the object and not the actual object. This method is actually very similar to the Wigglebones method, but I think it's a little bit more flexible. It also doesn't really support collisions by default, but there might be a way to get around this. Like, I haven't looked too much into this. I think it's possible. So let me show you an example. So here I have an object that could act as a collider for this method. So you'll see at the middle of each center face of this object, I have a vertex. So the idea is that we simulate the position of this vertex, basically. That will drive the location of the bones of the rig. So just to explain a little bit better what we're doing here. So the idea here is that we would have cloth physics or soft body physics on the mesh I showed you. The mesh would collide with other things just as we want. And the way this drives the breast simulation is that we have empties parented, vertex parented to the vertices that I showed you on the center faces. And the breast rig bones have a damped track constraint and a copy location constraint on them. So basically they just follow the location of those vertices. So I think this is how you could theoretically get collisions to work with this method. I'm not going to be doing this right now, but let me know if you would like me to cover this in the future. How the actual method works is that we basically have one line of vertices and we simulate just the one line. So as you can imagine, this is quite cheap computationally speaking, and it can also be quite flexible, like more flexible than the Wigglebone method. So for example, if you wanted to animate a tree, you could trace the center of mass for each branch and the trunk, and basically run a simulation on that. So in this particular example, I couldn't actually get this method to work very well, but let me show you what I came up with. I just did the one breast because I got a little bit discouraged. But anyway, let me show you. So as you can see, the results are very similar to what we got with the Wigglebone add-on. Fundamentally, these are very similar approaches. Once again, it would look better if there were more points of articulation for the bones and also for the simulation. But yeah, I think you get the idea. If you want to recreate this setup, it's not complicated, but it does take a little bit of work. So let me know if you would like me to cover this. The next type of physics you can add is rigid body physics. Um, I will also not be covering this because it doesn't really make sense for breasts, but certainly for rigid objects, it makes a lot of sense and it's very reliable. Another bonus method that I would like to mention, but I will not actually be covering, is the geometry nodes method. So you could fake physics with geometry nodes, or you could like do actual physics with geometry nodes as well, using the simulation nodes. But anyway, let's get back to the actual method of this video. So the surface deform method, this is the most reliable method that also has collisions, and it's relatively simple to set up. So basically, you just want to duplicate your breast mesh and give it cloth physics. I find that to get good results, you want to have mostly even quads, topologically speaking. So you might want to remove the nipple, and you also want a closed mesh so that the pressure setting works correctly. But yeah, once you've made those simple modifications to your mesh, all you got to do is play with the settings until you get something that you like. So let me show you what I got. So unfortunately, the motion is quite extreme here. I couldn't quite get it to be the way I wanted it to be. Um, you can adjust the influence of the surface deform modifier to maybe tone it down a little bit, but I usually like to play with the physics settings first. But anyway, as you can see, you get a nice deformation of the breasts, and it has collisions, and it's really performant as well. But yeah, that's pretty much it for this video. Just what is one piece of advice for you? So in 3D, like oftentimes you don't actually want to do the physics. Like sometimes you do, but oftentimes all you care about is the result. And to get a good result, like oftentimes you can actually just fake it. It's very case specific what kind of fakery you're going to need to recreate a given effect. And in Blender, I think it mostly comes down to like mastering geometry nodes. So for that reason, I would actually like to do some geometry nodes videos next. I think geometry nodes is an important skill to master if you want to be really flexible with the things you can do with Blender. I wouldn't say I've mastered it yet, but I get by. If there is something specific that you would like to see me cover in geometry nodes, leave a comment. I'm going to be doing at least one video on geometry nodes before we continue with the series. And yeah, I'll see you then.